Hey there, long time a fan of Azure Tech, right? Well, today, I wanted to have us talking about something a bit different but super important if you are after snappy application performance, how to work with mutable and partial data in Azure Cache for Redis. Now, to be clear, Azure Cache for Redis is not just some Redis service up in the Azure cloud, it's a fully managed, in-memory data structure store that's got the goods for quick access and speedy write and read times. So let's dive in, shall we? It's always good to start somewhere, and we need to understand Azure Cache for Redis technical architecture. Imagine that the Azure Cache for Redis is a team of chefs, each chef representing a node, working in the Redis kitchen. The Azure Cache for Redis kitchen has specific tools and techniques to ensure that, even when chefs cook and modify the courses quickly or adjust just one dish on the plate, the meal keeps coming out great for everyone enjoying. This kitchen doesn't stand alone in the cloud though, it's well supported, scalable, and flexible to suit various needs for real-time data access. Now, handling mutable and partial data is like trying to make a quick tweak in a recipe without ruining the whole meal. Mutable data, those bits that change frequently, think of this as a live-fire cooking competition where your dish is on the chopping block each time your ingredient shifts. The Azure Cache chefs keep their dishes up to scratch with a process called hotset for Redis, which is this sort of scheduled refresh that helps manage your dynamically changing content. For partial updates, imagine seasonal ingredients that don't need replacing with a fresh one each time, just a pinch to refresh the flavor. We apply a methodology called partial sets in Azure Cache, so when you need to change a small part of the data, the Azure chefs use a pinch here and a pinch there to alter it without tossing the entire course out the window. To manage all this, the chefs in Azure Cache for Redis need a solid recipe book and strategy with Redis transactions, where multiple steps can be executed atomically, and ensuring consistency when they are dealing with something as complex as mutable and partial data flavors. This is where enterprise data center-based deployments come into play, providing the power and resources necessary to handle the load without turning into a hot mess. And with the use of Redis Sentinel, which keeps an eye on the team's synchronization, chefs can swiftly handle any hiccups without interrupting the flow of service. Now, the setup, while not overly complicated because of Azure's managed infrastructures, it's like setting up for the dinner rush. You need your chefs grouped in the right kitchen, with the secret ingredient being the configuring the right Redis keys with proper expirations and access controls to avoid any unintended data contamination and ensure our diners only get the best. For enterprise-grade deployments, which are like hosting a big food festival in the cloud, the Redis Cache chefs will rely on high availability and failover processes to ensure service continuity, just as they would back in the day when chefs had to stand by with quick backups in their cook-off days. This setup makes sure even if one chef gets a bump on the head, the night continues without any dishes getting dropped. In an industry-grade setup, Azure Cache is the most secure kitchen when it comes to protecting the data, thanks to the Redis security module, which is like the latest kitchen technology, ensuring that only authorized chefs can access sensitive recipes, encrypting data in transit and at rest, and using advanced features like perky expiration times and access control, keeping our customers' information as confidential as a top-secret cooking technique passed down for generations. Now let's talk troubleshooting, which in cooking translates to ensuring that our dishes are perfectly balanced, and in Azure terms, that our application has no stalls or delays, always smooth like butter. Issues with mutable and partial data might arise with data consistency problems, And here's where one should have their dashboard in Azure Dash that provides insight into the performance and health, much like a head chef overseeing the whole kitchen. Beyond just managing data, we got to maintain the team's spirit. That's where Azure Cache for Redis best practice comes into play, which can be thought of like the cooking school that trains new chefs and ensures they are doing the right thing every single time they update or read the menu items. Best practices include things like scaling the team size based on kitchen demands, using appropriate data types, and staying on top of performance optimizations. In the world of Azure Cache for Redis, scaling is also like adjusting the number of chefs for a big event or a quiet evening. Knowing when to deploy more hands on deck or send some home is an art that keeps performance optimal and resources used efficiently. And while we talk scaling, we can't ignore the security of our kitchen, which in Azure terms is locked with keys management and multi-factor authentication to ensure only those with permission can access the Redis Chef Kitchen. And you know what I find fascinating? In Azure Cache for Redis, every cent, every byte of memory counts. It's like we're using every last morsel of our budget to deliver the most delicious dishes possible. That's why monitoring and optimization tools are our chef's best friends, providing feedback on how to cut costs, streamline our processes, and ensure our resources serve our customers as cost-effectively as a diner at a 20-course tasting menu pays for just one dish without the sneak peek of dessert before paying. Now, when we talk about edge cases and the nitty-gritty, it's like knowing the difference between the tiniest spice in the rack and how it makes a huge flavor impact. In Azure Cache for Redis, edge cases might relate to dealing with partial reads and writes where chefs need to synchronize updates for data coherency, or scenarios where data is accessed simultaneously from different places, demanding lock-free data structures and strategies such as Redis publish-subscribe mechanics to share data efficiently amongst chefs without any data clash. For the curious minds looking to master Azure Cache for Redis, understanding how it integrates with other Azure offerings can be like discovering how to seamlessly blend flavors from different culinary worlds. Through tools like Azure Automation, integration with Azure Monitor, and leveraging Azure Logic apps for automating workflows involving mutable and partial data, we can orchestrate complex data operations with the ease of coordinating a global food tour. When it comes to best practices for using mutable and partial data in Azure Cache for Redis, remember this rule: always cook data in the most eco-friendly way without sacrificing quality. This means implementing practices to preserve memory, using compression techniques, and optimizing read-write operations to ensure we are not just making the food amazing but also preserving the environment. Before we wrap up our chat, remember, as much as Azure Cache for Redis is about the culinary itself, it's about the service experience too. Implementing caching with Azure Cache for Redis can be like setting up an express lane for our food, where dishes are served quick and with perfect taste. It's about not just keeping diners informed with updates when an ingredient changes, but also ensuring they enjoy a dining experience that keeps pace with the evolving menu, enhancing their journey to the peak of dining excellence. As we talk about best practices and strategies related to mutable and partial data in Azure Cache for Redis, make sure to always cook on a modern palette. Take advantage of the latest enhancements coming from Azure, keeping your application ready for the fast-changing demands of the diner world, while also being a responsible steward of your Azure resources, ensuring every byte is utilized to its fullest, just like no grain of rice should go to waste. If you are in any doubt about Azure, remember, you can always pop by my blog for the latest news, tutorials and tips, just remember the little disclaimer in the corner where it says, visit neeraj.qzz.io and subscribe to TechLab. Until next time, keep your cups handy and your appetite for tech knowledge forever hungry. Cheers, and see you on the flip side of this tech tasting menu.